Yeah, we're gonna get started. So anyway, this is our parent group on brain and motor development. So we have Sally Schulte here to speak with us tonight. So I'm so excited. She's a teacher at Green Tree. She's a PE teacher and she's absolutely amazing. So real fast, before we get started, we kind of started these with, goodness, Addie, is 5 years, right? Is that what we decided? I think 5 years ago. So, and Barfield, early childhood, and then parents and teachers, we kind of got together and we just wanted to help parents gain as much knowledge as possible with anything that they were going through with their kiddos and how to work through problems and issues and things like that. So, and then as a parent, they've also helped me along the way. So anyway, we have all different topics. So this month we've had, Sally's our third presenter this month. So be sure to check every single month. I know next month we have a big sleep month. So that's a good one to tune into. And then we also have Stacey Kelsey coming back to talk about Yes Brain. And so that's an awesome presentation as well. So anyway, if you are not signed up with Parents of Teachers, please do that. It's absolutely amazing. Both of my kiddos, I hear them in the background right now. Both of my kiddos, we go through Parents of Teachers, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's great to have an outside perspective, and they really pump you up too. A lot of times, you know, we beat ourselves up as parents, and you know, Ashley will come in and she's like, "Oh, you're doing a great job," and I'm like, "Thanks, you. I needed that." So anyway, it's a wonderful, wonderful free program. So please make sure you sign up for that. So Addie, anything else? Nope, all good? Okay. All right, Sally, if we want to get started, go for it.
Okay, that sounds great. Before I pull up the presentation, exactly what Tara said, PAT could not be a more amazing. It's just amazing. My own kids went through it. I have 3 that are in Green Tree, and I learned so much from them. So I can't recommend it enough. It's really awesome. All right, I am going to start presenting now for you all. And hopefully, okay. You should be able to see this. If not, ladies, let me know. But what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight is a little bit about your kid's brain, how it develops, and then how the movement piece really affects that. So who am I? I am Sally Schulte. I've been with the Wentzville School District now for 12 years. I spent a good chunk of those years at Heritage Primary and Heritage Intermediate, and now I am at Green Tree. This is my 2nd year there. I am a health and PE teacher, and I truly am passionate about all things motor development, especially when it comes to children. And those 3 kiddos you see down there in the corner, that's my why. That's Eva, Adeline, and Levi, and they are a 3rd grade, 2nd grade, and a kindergartner this year. So our lives are very busy, but I'm really happy to share this information with you just as a parent. I wish I would have known some of the things I'm going to share with you tonight earlier than when I decided to research it. So hopefully you guys can take a few things away tonight and know that you are amazing and that you're probably doing really awesome things. And this is reinforcement for you. And there might be some things that you had questions about, and hopefully this can help you with that. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so information tonight. I'm a mom too, obviously. I will make this quick and as efficient as possible. I'm going to share some information you might know, and then I'm going to build on to that. And I will send you away with some things that you can do tomorrow or whenever it is that you watch this. You can implement it immediately. And then if there are any questions, you can absolutely reach out to me. My information is in that front slide, and this presentation will be shared with you all. Okay, so the amazing brain. Let's start with some of the basics. Your brain is a 3-pound amazing organ that controls pretty much all the functions. It interprets all kinds of informations, intelligence, creativity, emotion, memory. All these things are in there. These things you guys probably know. Things you might have forgotten from anatomy and phys is there are 3 really important parts to the brain. When it comes to development, these are the things that we need to know. So there's the cerebrum, which are the two hemispheres up top. There's a right and the left. The right side controls the left side of the brain. The left side controls, I'm sorry, I said brain, the right side of the body. And then the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. And that's important for a reason, and we'll come back to that. There's also the cerebellum. And the cerebellum, I like to call those the meatballs when I talk to my students and we're describing the brain and analyzing it, looking at it. So the meatballs sit down underneath the cerebrum, right next to that brain stem. And pretty much what the cerebellum does is it coordinates your muscle movements, helps you maintain posture and balance, all very important things for development. And we'll talk about that here in a minute too. And then the brain stem, this is the, that part of your brain that controls all things you don't have to think about. So that brainstem is super important. All right, going back to the cerebrum, when we talked about the right and left side of the cerebrum, right side controls the left side of your body, left side controls the right side of the body. In order for both sides of the brain to work at the same time, there is a bridge in between those two hemispheres, and we call that the corpus callosum. And that is super, super important when it comes to development, especially for our preschool kiddos when they're in school. Making those connections from the right to the left helps them with all of their, basic education with the fine motor and the gross motor. You want both sides to work together so kids can function freely, so they can not have as many issues. So that corpus callosum, making those connections, is super, super important from the right side to the left. The good thing to know about the brain is that even if there is a bad connection made, or there's a connection that hasn't been made, or if we need to, break a habit and then rebuild something else, that's called neuroplasticity, when you can break those connections and rebuild and make it into something that we want. So we're going to talk about that a lot tonight too. So I have a question for you guys. When is it that you think the brain fully develops? If anybody does trivia, this is when you're going to remember, because I hear this a couple times when I go to trivia. We're big trivia people. It's actually 25 years old. That, to me, is quite an astonishing number for a number of reasons. As a parent, I look at my kiddos and I'm like, come on, guys, you should know better than that. Well, honestly, they don't. So as a parent, just remember that a brain does not fully develop, cannot make those cognitive connections of, really thinking through something and knowing what's going to happen afterwards and figuring in all the pros and cons in less than a couple seconds until the age of 25. That's a really big deal. So this is pretty much what I just talked to you about. Most of our kids, pretty much a lot of our kids, especially your kiddos who are in preschool, they're always going to process their information with the amygdala. And the amygdala is another important part of the brain. We call that the emotion center. The amygdala, if you want to think about it, it's kind of like an information filter. So when new things come in, it goes to the amygdala, and the amygdala decides if it's dangerous or if it's safe. So that's pretty much what the amygdala does. So if you think about your kiddos, they're always trying to look for things that make them happy, that give them that satisfaction sensation. And the amygdala doesn't always know what new things are good or bad for them. So that's why sometimes your kids just might make some of those decisions. You're like, really? Come on. Were you really thinking through that? No, they weren't. The amygdala was doing it for them, and it didn't do a great job. So it just takes some time for your kids to really understand what's going on. All right, moving on. So let's talk about development. I gave you some of the basics of the brain, and we're going to move on from there. So things to know about development. Your brain actually grows inside out and back to the front. So the best way to think about this, if you think about your babies, most of the time they react to things, and they mostly react to things, and they usually communicate through emotions, which would be the amygdala. So I'm hungry. What do? I cry, right? And then as they start to grow, their movements start very small, just turning their head, and then they start to progress and get bigger and more complex. So it's almost like a stair-step situation. As I learn how to turn my head, I can see my hand. Oh my gosh, I have a hand. Then the hand realizes it can pick things up. Then the hands and the feet work together to realize they can get into a crawling position and a sitting position, and then they can move. So babies start very small, and then it works to more complex. So that's pretty much how the brain grows when it comes to development. It's just simple terms as to what it looks like. All right, so when it comes to development with the brain, and this is something, I won't touch on all of these in a whole lot of detail. This could literally be an 8-hour seminar with the things that affect the growth of the brain and the development of the brain, but these are the really big ones. Nutrition is huge, and to go along with nutrition, there's also food sensitivities. So for example, I'll give you, for instance, with my first child, I'm a new mom. Every time she ate, she was super gassy, she was fussy. Me as a new mom, I called the doctor. I was like, something's wrong. Something's not right with my kiddo. And they said, well, it's probably just because, you're a new mom. You might be a little tense. There's lots of things they told me, but your baby's fine. She's gaining weight. All things are great. So we get to a year, and this has continued happening, me as a new mom. And at a year, when we switched her to cow's milk, we finally realized that she was, not lactose intolerant, but she had a huge sensitivity to milk. So as a new parent, I felt horrible. My poor kid. So those types of things, food sensitivity for her, we caught it fast enough that it didn't really mess with her brain growth per se. She got all the nutrients that she needed, but those are just things as new parents that it's okay, it happens. But just watch for those things. If you have a sense you think something's not right, it's okay to ask questions. We're going to come back to trauma because that's a really big one. Positive and negative experiences. This could be a lot of different things. This could be love. This could be moving. We don't always know how babies and children, how they process things. So if you think about moving, that's a really big deal for a little kid. If they're used to a house that they were born in, all their toys are there, and then all of a sudden they're in somewhere new, that could be kind of scary for them. So those types of things. And then positive experiences. You want school to be a positive experience for your kiddos. And I know Barfield is amazing. And I'm sure every kid that goes there knows that they are loved and they feel supported. But those big changes in our children's lives, we need to just watch our kids and see how they are experiencing it and see how they're feeling and really tune in to what they're showing you and telling you. And so those are some big things, because those positive and negative experiences, they are detrimental to those connections in our brain and how they see things and how they register things and what the amygdala does for them when we talked about that with those emotions. Baby gadgets. Baby gadgets there's millions of them now, and most of them are really, really cool, and most of them have really great things that they do. But just making sure that your kids aren't, your babies actually aren't overwhelmed with the baby gadgets, that you give them one thing at a time. Because when the brain is overstimulated, it has a hard time figuring out what to do. So it's just seeing lots of different things. And instead of being able to, okay, I see this toy, and then I'm going to play with it for a while, and then I'm going to figure out how that toy works. That's how you're making those connections in the brain. So just making sure that you don't overwhelm them with too much at one time. Let them play with one thing for a period of time. Technology is another one. And I'm sure all of you as parents have heard this before. Technology is a blessing and a curse. And with all things, even with, food and everything else, moderation is the key. A lot of our kids, especially right now in the pandemic, they're getting so much more screen time than they're used to. And if you think about development, when it comes to development in your kids, especially their eyes, the eyes and the brain, there's different lights that come out of screens, and their eyes are so focused on one thing for longer periods of time that some of our kids we're noticing actually come to us. They really struggle with peripheral vision, and their natural way to react in their own surroundings. So some students, and we'll talk about this too in a little bit, are coming to us in kindergarten. The kiddos that I'm seeing, they are very unaware of where they are in their own surroundings. And that's not always due to technology, but the increase in some of the studies I've been reading, there might be more and more connections to that. All right, and then environment. Environment is something, just think about, like where kids grow up, if they have pets, if they have grandparents, where they live in the world. Environment can be a number of different things. And most of the time we look at it in the physical sense. So there might be some kids that sleep with brother and sister because there's only one bed in the house, those types of things, and how that would affect their growth and development. Could be negative, could be positive, but just knowing that environment has an effect on that. Coming back to trauma, I say trauma, and most people, when they hear trauma, they're like, whoa, that's a big bad word. It's really not. It can be, but trauma looks different to everyone. Trauma looks different to kids. Trauma looks different to adults. It can be perceived in a lot of different ways. So when you think about that amygdala again, and maybe you have the same problems that I have in my house, when my kiddos, sister takes the other sister's shoes, because right now my girls are 17 months apart, but they're pretty much twins in size, so they share clothes. So if one takes the other shoe, to them, that's trauma. There is a huge fit thrown. There are just lots of very big emotions, and to us as adults, we look at that, well, okay, it's just a shoe. This is not something that you should be throwing such a huge deal about. But for our younger kids, you got to think about that again when we talked about how they're not fully developed until 25 years old. Their brain is not. So to them, their brain is telling them, hey, this is a huge deal to me, and this is how I'm going to show you. So trauma can be a small thing for some, and it can be really big things too. It can be, the loss of a loved one. It could be the loss of a pet. It could be, like I said earlier, with the positive and negative experiences. It could be moving. It could be a car accident, or it could be a broken arm or leg. Trauma to the individual is totally different than, to your neighbor next door or to a kid the same age. It really depends on the individual child and how they process and deal with it. So these are all things that affect the growth of the brain. That's kind of overwhelming. You really just kind of want to wrap your kids up in a bubble and keep them safe until they're 25, so you know that everything's going to be okay, but that's not the case. So we're going to look at some more development, and then I promised by the end, like I told you, I was going to give you some things to be able to do with those kiddos, with your kiddos, so we can help them out with these. All right, so let's look at development and how motor development and the brain are connected. Okay, so we talked earlier about kind of like the stair steps. So from the very beginning, when the baby is born, the brain develops and passes certain milestones. If all of those milestones are met in a timely manner, the brain is considered balanced. So both of the hemispheres, the right and left hemispheres, the cerebrums, they're working together, which is great. That's what we want when the kids come to school. We want those hemispheres working together. And then here's what I need you guys to think about. So what do you think happens if those milestones aren't met in the timely manner, or the hemispheres can't work together, or, a milestone is just skipped altogether? Lots of things happen there. All right, so I am going to share. I love this website, and I do this presentation with teachers and parents and educators and administrators, and this one always gets them, because these are things that you might not think about. Okay, so motor development wise, and the reason why I show you this is because as a parent, I wish I would have had this printed out somewhere just as a checklist to know that, my kids are on the right track. If you think about babies, motor development wise, by 2 months, they should begin to push up, when they're on the tummy. So that's like tummy time type things. And then they should start making deliberate movements with their arms and legs. They should realize by this point that they have an arm, that they have appendages. Maybe not doing a whole lot with them quite yet, but just, they know that they're there. By 4 months, they should be able to hold their head upright. They should be able to bear weight on their legs when their feet are flat on the floor. That doesn't mean they're standing on their own right now. That just means when you pick them up and you put their feet on the floor, that they can, figure out to keep their legs somewhat straight and understand what that feeling is. And then by this point, some of them might actually be pushing up from their tummy to their elbows. All right, by 6 months, we're sitting without support, hopefully. We're rocking on our hands and knees, and that's the precursor to crawling. Okay, we're moving objects back and forth. By 9 months, we're creeping, crawling, scooting. We might even be starting to pull up and stand. We're pointing at things. We're reaching and grabbing for toys. We're starting to pick up small pieces of food. And then by 12 months, we should be able to shake and throw objects. That's not always a great thing. Nobody wants a wooden block thrown at them, but just know developmentally that that's an okay thing. That's a good thing. And then they should most likely by 12 months be able to take a few steps while holding on to a person or to a piece of furniture. That does not mean by 12 months your kid should be walking freely on their own. Some kiddos do. Some kiddos, it just takes them a little bit longer. All 3 of my kids were at different levels with this. But by 12 months, they should at least be able to hold on to something or someone's hand and be able to take a few steps. So the big pieces that I really wanted you guys to know and to look at. So toddlers and preschoolers, which is mostly the age that we're kind of talking about now. And myself as a physical educator, as a PE teacher, over the last 10 years that I've been teaching, these are the things that I have seen our students coming in not being able to do or not being able to do well. And this is what really sparked my curiosity and my interest in my research. So if you think about this, if you look at age 18 months to 2 years, some of these things on here, you're probably already saying, wow, that's a big deal. So walking forwards and backwards, that's the big part right there, backwards. We have our kids do a lot of big movements, both forward and backwards. Most of them, for the most part, by kindergarten, move pretty well forward at a lot of our big gross locomotor movements. But the backwards piece is really interesting. We have a lot of kiddos coming in who, as soon as they start moving backwards, they immediately fall over. What that tells me is that's just something that they haven't done a lot, and they're kind of missing that. They're missing that piece. They're missing that bridge in their corpus callosum from their right and left brain. Something's not totally developed there. Then there's also the running piece, which most 2-year-olds, you probably wish they wouldn't run because they're so fast. But running is something else that we see in kindergarten now that I have seen over the last couple of years, where there are some kids that really struggle with this. They look like, if anybody is a Friends fan, they look like Phoebe running in the park, or maybe that was Seinfeld. I can't remember. Anyways, it was somebody running in the park and their arms are all over the place and their legs are just crazy. And it's just not a smooth movement. It's just very awkward movements. Believe it or not, we do have.
Sally, it's Friends. It's Phoebe from
Friends.
Okay,
it is Friends. I was right. Thank you. Yeah. All right. And then believe it or not, we do have kiddos that come into kindergarten who have major struggles with holding crayons and markers. And that is something with, when you look at this developmentally, by around 2 years of age, they should be able to hold it. I'm not saying they are like Picasso and can draw a beautiful masterpiece. Not that kindergarten work. I mean, I love kindergarten work. I love looking at the octopus people and, that's amazing. But we have kindergartners come in and they don't know how to hold the marker or the crayons. So if you look at developmentally wise, that's a 4-year deficit for them with that motor movement. That's a big deal for a little kid coming into school and trying to give them that positive experience. They're coming in at a deficit and they're already struggling. The other one is throwing a ball. I love this unit. I mean, we teach throwing and catching all year long, but I love working with the kindergartners because they're just so awesome with this. Their progression is amazing. By the beginning of the year to the end of the year, most of the kids can actually throw to a target, but at the beginning of the year, it's very scary. We do not use anything hard by any means with them, but yarn balls are flying everywhere with kindergartners, and it just takes time to really perfect that type of skill. But just knowing that at 2 years of age, they should be able to throw a ball. All right, the big ones that I want you guys to see too is 3 to 4. This is something else that we see a lot in our schools, alternating feet on the stairs. So when you think alternating feet on the stairs, that's not right, left foot on one stair and then right, left foot on the next stair. That's right foot on one stair, left foot on the next stair, right foot, left foot, all the way up and down. I did my own little research study. It wasn't very scientific, but I was really curious about this. And I tested all of my kindergartners, and I had about 200. Well, it was under 200. It was close to like 170 kindergarten. Yeah, it was about that. And there was 25% of them, 25%. That's a lot of kids who could not alternate their feet on the stairs. And that's a big deal. Most of our schools now, and if I could be on the building committee for all of our new buildings, I would suggest that we put stairs in all elementary schools, as well as having, the other services for kids when they're on crutches and wheelchairs and all of that as well. But I feel it's a huge disservice to our kids that we're building all these buildings without stairs. We just have a lot of kids who come in struggling with this, and to really watch them work at it is, it's very overwhelming. It's overwhelming for them. But man, when they start to get it, they are so excited to show you that they can walk up and down the stairs alternating feet. So this is something that they should be, I'm not saying have it mastered, but they should be able to try it, should be able to do it by the age of 4. Our kindergartners come in with this at almost, a 1 to 2 year developmental delay. Jumping with 2 feet is something else I see a lot. A lot of our kids do a strange leap type motion. When they jump, they can start with 2 feet, but they hardly ever land on 2 feet. Or if you tell them to jump, they leap. They'll start with 1 foot and then land on the opposite foot. Jumping is something that I have seen a lot more kids struggle with over the last 10 years or so. So that's another big one that we work on a lot in PE. Puzzles, and then by 3 to 4 years of age, they should be able to, since they now know how to hold that crayon or marker, they should hopefully be able to start drawing circles and squares, or maybe those octopus people I was telling you about. I love those octopus people. They're my favorite, with the 15 legs and the crazy faces. And then riding a tricycle. Being able to ride a tricycle involves both sides of the brain, just like alternating feet on the stairs and jumping with 2 feet. That's the right side and the left side of the brain working together. Being able to ride a tricycle by 4 years of age is a really big deal. That takes a whole lot of muscle coordination and the brain talking. Like that's a lot of development. That's a really big development piece right there. All right. And then we'll stop with our 5 to 6 year olds, just because that's where your kiddos are heading. So by grade school, we should hopefully see our kids be able to run, hop on 1 foot, skip, and jump 2 feet to 2 feet. What I see a lot with our kids is skipping is extremely hard. And then jumping, like I already talked to, hopping as well, just for the balance piece. And then running, we kind of already chatted about that, but usually by 6 years of age, most of our kids have that down. It's just a few of them that are just still very awkward. I can tell you as a teacher, I can pretty much pick out the kids who are struggling with reading and writing. If they can't do jumping jacks and they really struggle with skipping, I can usually pinpoint that those kiddos, not necessarily that they're really far behind, but I do know that they struggle with that, because those movements actually correlate with reading and writing, which I thought was pretty interesting. All right, performing basic dance moves. I got to thank Fortnite for bringing that stuff back because our kids love to dance, which is great. But any dances, honestly, the chicken dance, the hokey pokey, all those things are great. We do all those with our kids. Those dance moves help, each side of the body work together to make the moves come together. And then throwing and kicking a ball and catching it with two hands. I already told you about this in our kindergartners, but this is a skill that we are constantly hitting on, K through 6. And usually it takes till about second grade with some of our kids to actually get it down, which is totally fine. But we know that. So we kind of know how to plan for that. And then copying shapes and letters. This is big for a number of different reasons. As a parent, as an educator, I struggle with this one. And we are all about rigor and getting our kids ready for the world and just preparing them for what's to come. At 5 to 6 years old, they should really only be copying shapes and letters, which a lot of them do, which is great in the beginning of the year. But by the end of the year in kindergarten, our kiddos are expected to write sentences, illustrate books, and then put all their thoughts onto a sheet of paper. So if you think about a 5 to 6-year-old who's really only supposed to be copying shapes and letters, once again, we are asking a lot out of them in kindergarten. And we have some kids who come to us who are really far behind. If you look back and we talked about how they should be able to hold crayons and markers, and then they come into us at 6 with that 4-year deficiency, and they're already expected to copy shapes and letters, and hopefully know them and learn them very quickly. So that one's really hard as a parent as an educator. I just remember in kindergarten only having to copy the shapes and letters. I don't remember having to write books, but this is something that we have to work really hard on as educators in all areas. It's not just the classroom teacher, it's all of us. We're all working to help our kiddos get to that point. And then one that really shocked me down at the bottom, and then we're done with this, and you guys can look at the rest of it if you want, would be maybe to start playing a musical instrument. So what shocks me about this is that they're only really supposed to be able to copy shapes and letters. But by this point, if they're developmentally really on the rise and doing great things, they might be able to start playing a musical instrument. So I just thought that was a little crazy. But who knows? I'm sure there are kiddos out there that can do that. Okay.
I was going to say, Sally, I know for the 2-year-old and 3-year-old, I just did a screening on a 27-month-old, and jumping with both feet and alternating feet on the steps. Those are both on the 27-month-old ages and stages questionnaire. So we're already trying to get ahead of that trend.
That's awesome.
It's interesting to see, especially like ranch homes. I mean, where are you going to find the steps? So it's often the opportunity and that ability to practice that. But parents as teachers, keeping an eye on your kiddos.
Heck yeah. I love it. Keep shouting that out. That's great. I'm happy to hear that. All right. So that's just, I wanted to just inform the parents, you guys, of that, because, as a parent myself, had I known a lot of those things, and I knew some of the basic stuff, but some of the bigger pieces there, I would have, I don't know, I feel like I would have done a couple things different. So hopefully that helped a few of you with that. All right. So what are you seeing? And I kind of shared a little bit about what we're seeing, but here's some of the things that can be related back to those developmental delays that I just talked about. Reflexes, I'll get into. When reflexes aren't integrated, you're going to see a lot of different things, and I'll talk about reflexes towards the end. But we, kiddos who are missing some of those developmental steps, you might see them, what we call, they chew their shirts, or they have to constantly have something, have like oral fixations. They have to constantly have something in their mouth. We have melters. And when I say melters, those are our kiddos who have a really hard time sitting for longer than 10 seconds. They honestly look like snowmen. So you sit them in a spot and they're, they just start to droop and they curl into a ball. And then the next thing you know, they're laying on the ground. So those are our melters. And then we also have spinners. And spinners is something else in my room for the longest time that used to drive me crazy, because as soon as I would, the kids would come in, they would sit on their spots and they would just start spinning, especially the younger ones, K and 1. And as I started to research this, it's actually a developmental delay. That is the brain seeking input from, that motion, because the brain hasn't quite developed that part yet. So spinning is a sign of a developmental delay. There's fidgeters. So those are our kiddos who always need something in their fingers. It's more of like a tactile, like they just need something to touch. They need those sensations. And then there's the bigger things. There are kiddos who get easily frustrated and they just have tantrums on the drop of a dime. And that, if you think about it developmentally wise, once again, we talk about that amygdala. If it's something new for them, or if their brain is missing those pieces, and then you introduce it very quickly, the amygdala is going to immediately react to it in an emotional way, because it doesn't know what to do with it. It doesn't know if it's safe. It doesn't know if it's, going to hurt them. So a lot of your kids will just kind of do like a tiny freak out or a big freak out. There's lots of different things that you can see. And then we talked about those kindergartners who are coming in missing some of those bigger motor development pieces, not being able to hold the markers, or not being able to alternate the feet, or not being able to jump. And when they see other kids do it, or when they're asked to do it, their brain immediately goes into, I don't know how to do this. So those tiny brains who don't know how to process it, they're not 25 years old yet, they are going to show you that through those frustrations and those tantrums. That's what happens there. Overstimulation, like I said earlier, kind of like talking about the baby gadgets. When kids come to school for the first time, whether that be preschool or kindergarten, it's overwhelming. It can be very overstimulating, which in turn can lead to more frustration, or we have some kids who just totally introvert and they don't say a word because they're so overwhelmed. There's lack of focus, and then there's also lack of social skills. So if you have kids who are just developmentally behind, they don't know how to relate to other students their age who are doing the things that they can't. So sometimes a negative effect of that would be they don't know how to play with those kids because they're not at the same level that they are. So these are some of the things that we're starting to see in schools more and more. Like I said, this is about a 10-year thing now that we're going on, that I've just seen more and more kids come to school with these signs of showing us that, their brain's not fully developed yet, or where it should be. I shouldn't say fully developed yet. I apologize. It's not developed where it should be. All right. So we as parents, we are so important. We are the front lines of defense. We are the ones who can help our kids, not feel these things or not get to these points. All right. So let's start to tie it all together now. Okay. I love this visual. I use this visual with pretty much everyone. This is super, super powerful right here. So when we talked about babies and growing, and then we talked about, meeting those milestones that they need to get to before they get to school for them to be successful. If you look at the very bottom, the sensory development, the senses, babies, they touch, they feel, they try to understand their world around them by putting things in their mouths. Just by feeling things, by touching things, and then you move up the ladder until you get to directionality. So knowing, forwards, backwards, right and left. Right below that, I skipped the very important one, the integration of the left and right side of the body, that midline. That's that invisible line that cuts you in half from right side to left side, which is all about the corpus callosum. So having your brain be able to talk left and right side and having both sides do something at the same time, that's super important. And then that leads into knowing, forward, backwards, left, right. And then you get all the way up to the top. I'm going to ask my own self that question. Oh my gosh, what is up at the top? It's academics. Oh my goodness. So if you think about that, children have to have all of these milestones met before before academics is something that they could do well with or, feel comfortable with. That's a huge deal. That's a whole lot of stuff, that our kids have to be able to do or feel comfortable doing before they ever get to those academics. And then if you see on the side, shockingly enough, it's really not, because we've already talked about it. All of those pieces, it's all the brain development, nutrition we talked about, and environment are all things that can affect these as well. So there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into those first couple of years of life for our kiddos. And we want them to be successful and we want them to feel safe at school, but we also know that we need to make sure that these pieces are met. And that's kind of where, we're starting to look at now. And it's really interesting stuff. So I hope you guys like that visual. All right, moving on. So the movement piece. Movement piece is obviously very important to me as a PE teacher. And I know how powerful it is. I have seen the effects of movement on kiddos and the lack of movement effects on our kiddos. And this COVID stuff has been a blessing and a curse for a number of different reasons. A blessing, when we were out of school in the spring and the summer, bikes and trampolines and scooters and roller skates, you couldn't find them. Everybody was, finding these things for their kids to do, to keep them, to keep them active, to keep them moving, to keep them busy. And I don't know how many kids that came back to school, young kids, like first graders who came back to school, even kindergartners, and said, "Oh, I learned how to ride a bike." Oh my gosh. Well, we talked about how that tricycle thing was pretty important, but a lot of kids for a while were falling away from the bikes and they were just moving to the scooters, which aren't a bad thing, but it's not the same kind of movement. So I was really excited to hear that trampolines and bikes were, flying off the shelves. That made my PE heart happy. But then there's the negative effect as well. When we went virtual, we talked about earlier, the screen time increased. And we do have some kiddos who are in virtual school right now. And I think virtual school is an amazing thing. And I'm not saying anything bad about it, but I worry about our kids and the movement piece. I hope that they are getting, I hope that they're moving while they're at home. So that just worries me as an educator, is that screen time piece. And I'm hoping that the technology doesn't increase our developmental delays anymore. All right, so let's think about what we can do as parents. I'm sure you have heard this before. Your own parents probably told you that kids thrive on routines. And if you think about the stair steps that I showed you earlier, that's how the brain builds itself as well. So if you're doing the same things over and over again, number one, the amygdala knows that it's safe. So it's not going to react in a huge, major, tantrum or negative way. So the amygdala feels safe. It knows that this is normal. I know it's expected. The brain stays really pretty calm. And then also those routines that you have set in place, whether that be morning routines, during the day routines, eating routines, bath time routines, sleeping routines. There's all kinds of routines. They come in all shapes and forms. But those routines allow the brain to lay down the groundwork, and then it becomes, second nature. It becomes totally normal, and the kids can do it in a snap. So routines are really awesome for more than just you knowing that your kids can get a certain thing done in a 30-minute period. But it's also really good for their brains and for developmental purposes. I put play in giant capital words with an exclamation point for a reason. Playing is so important. And I'm not talking about playing video games. I'm talking about playing. Go outside and play. That's the next one on there. Get dirty. Play with toys. Bring out your recycling and have the kids create something. Let them be creative. Let them tell you what they want to play. If they want to make up a new game, let them make a new game. Play with them. Playing is so important, and I'm not going to say not structuring it, but in PE, our play is structured. There is a goal we are going to work on throwing and catching, and here's the activities that we're going to do to work on that. So PE is its own special structured play. I'm talking about unstructured play. Take them to the playground, let them be imaginative, and just let them think, let them be their own little beings. Playing games at dinner time. I love this, and developmentally, I just think this helps kids think more. We play a lot of would you rather at my dinner table. So for example, I would start it and I would say, would you rather eat a worm or be a bird? And then I make them answer those questions. Uh-oh. You guys still see it? Sorry, my screen changed.
Yeah, we can see it. It's just
You can still see it.
smaller,
Oh,
like not
okay.
presented anymore.
I'm going to hit present again. I don't know what happened. Oh, no. That's okay. I'll jump right back on it. So would you rather, as I skip through these again, I apologize. Would you rather be a worm or eat a worm or be a bird? And I ask my kids why. I don't just say, well, I'd rather be a worm. No, you need to tell me why. Tell me why you want to be a worm. Tell me why you want to be a bird. And the conversations that come out of that are really interesting. And I learn a lot about my kids, honestly, and how they think things through. And then that helps me know how to help them process things later on. So if it's something really crazy that they say, you can probe and ask more questions about it. So that's just something, that we play at home. And then I love this too. Use the opposite hand some nights and make it a game. Say, you know what, tonight we're going to eat with our left hand if they're right-handed, or we're going to eat with both hands. And it doesn't have to be the whole meal because that would take forever. But just say, you know what, tonight you're going to eat your mashed potatoes with your left hand instead of your right hand, and watch them struggle and really see what it does to them, because that will help you see how your children process, new things as well. And it's good for crossing the midline. There's just lots of really good benefits out of that. And it's something super silly and goofy, and everybody can laugh about it when you get mashed potatoes on your nose instead of in your mouth. And then the other thing is eating finger foods. And this is really good for fine motor movement as well. And this is something else. It doesn't have to be the whole meal, but finger foods are a great way to, work on those fine motor skills. So whether that be with your right hand, your left hand, make them only eat with their thumb and pinky, like really make it a game. We make a lot of stuff a game in our house, and our kids really do a nice job with it. Okay, so limiting technology, we've kind of already talked about that, but really just what I want to tell you is think about what you're letting them do and for how long. So if your kiddo has been, has been on virtual school maybe for half the day for a couple of hours, and then you let them go watch something on their tablet, that's all still screen time. TV is the same, or playing games on the computer, even though they're educational, that's still screen time, and it's still a lot for their developing eyeballs and their brains. So just really think about and be mindful about what you're doing with technology. Role-playing social skills. This is a big one, and this one's hard. This is a hard one to do because what you want your child to do, but it's kind of hard to to not get frustrated. I find it hard to not get frustrated when I do this with my own kiddos. But when they come into me and they say, my sister is being really annoying and she keeps hitting me and all those types of things, the first thing I ask them is, well, did you talk about it with your sister? And keep in mind, my kids are 9 and 7 and 5. They're not really that old. But we've worked on this for pretty much for a really long time. And they will immediately know. If they told me no, they haven't talked to their sister about it yet, then they'll go back and they'll try it again. But if they have talked to their sister about it and they still can't come to, an agreement on it, then we talk through it together. And I talk to them about that. And I'm like, to my middle one, if it's her, I say, how would you feel if everyone in the world did what you're doing right now? So if she's the antagonizer You know, she's the one who's being annoying and maybe hitting her sister. I was like, how would you like it if everyone in the world acted like you right now? And she goes, well, I wouldn't like that at all. And I go, okay, so what is it that you're actually trying to do? She said, well, I just wanted her to listen to me. And I said, well, what were the steps that you went through it? I mean, like really role playing those social skills, those making them talk through it with you so they understand, instead of you just saying, stop hitting your sister, help them understand why that's not the right answer. And this is, as a parent, this is a real hard one. And as an educator, this is a hard one because I do this in my own classroom too. But the more and more you do it, the kids break down in their brain. Okay, my first reaction should not be hitting. My first reaction should be, okay, did I ask them nicely to stop? Or did I talk to them about it, how it made me feel? And the more you talk them through it and the more they try it, it becomes second nature again. It becomes a routine for them. That's just really powerful stuff. So as hard as it is, keep talking to your kiddos. And then rhyming and singing is something else, which I know PAT talks about a lot. And I know that preschool does as well, but this is just really all important things. You saw all those things in the developmental ladder earlier. Rhyming is really important for the brain, you know, to get them ready to come to school and learn new things. All right, so those are some things we can do to help. And then the movement piece too, more of the movement pieces, specifically that target a lot of the different pieces on that learning ladder, have dance parties. There are so many different things on YouTube now. And even if you just pull up music and you have your own little dance party wherever, we have dance parties all the time in my house. When somebody does something great, we dance it out. When somebody needs to turn their frown upside down, we dance it out. So it's super goofy, but it's a lot of fun. And if a kiddo can dance and feel comfortable dancing, then you know they're making those connections across the midline. Both their sides of their body are working together. The locomotor movements, the real big ones, the gross locomotor, when I have the kids go get the mail, like I make them skip, or I want you to walk backwards up the stairs tonight, or I want you to carry that really heavy laundry basket from one room to the other. And then, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot it really goes in that room. Like those kinds of things, having their bodies move through space and practicing those locomotor movements, the hopping, the skipping, the jumping, the running, even just walking in general. Those are really big things that the body needs a lot of opportunity to do to become great at it, to become proficient in it. I also have my kids do animal walks. So this is just, it's funny. Like I even make my students do this too. It's not just my own kids, but when we're in school and I say, I want you to think of your favorite animal and I don't want you to make any noise. I just want you to animal walk it out. And then I'm going to see if I can guess it. And my guesses are horrible from the beginning. You know, they're pretty blatantly obvious. It's either a cat or a dog. And I'm like, ooh, is that an alligator? Or is that a bird? You know, like those kinds of things, and really make them think through. That makes them think through how they're moving. And they're like, well, if she thinks I'm a bird, then maybe I'm doing something wrong. And it makes them really get into the actual walk. Now, these are all very silly, goofy things that you don't have to do all the time. They're just some examples of things you can do at home. There's a heel toe walk. And this is something else that I didn't touch on with the developmental pieces, but heel toe walking for our kids is extremely hard. And I mean a tight heel toe walk, like the heel comes right to the top of the toes. And then the same thing. You talk about kids not being able to balance. They have a really hard time with heel toe walking. And that's K through 2, honestly. So that's something that you probably don't think about, you know, to have your kids try at home, or draw a chalk line outside and have them go back and forth and pretend that it's a trapeze artist at the circus, you know, and they can't fall off the tightrope. So those types of things are all great things to do. Just pretend those play type things at home with the kids. The backwards movement we talked about, and tag. Oh my gosh, tag is amazing. Tag is great for so many reasons, for the locomotor movements, for the social skills, for the cardiovascular endurance and the muscular strength and endurance. There's so much that's great about tag. And a lot of time tag gets a bad name. But we love it at school, and we teach it to the kids for what it is. Like, they know why they're playing tag. They know it helps them learn how to play with others and learn how to move their body in space. So those are all some things you guys can do at home. And then this is the other thing I want to share with you guys more as a parent, but it's really helped me as an educator. This is just an extra resource for you. If you like to read, this Whole Brain Child book really changed my outlook on how I deal with kids in the moment. And when I say in the moment, I mean when kids are throwing a tantrum, or I start to see them escalate. I start to see them, their amygdala is kicking in and they're like, ooh, something's not right with this kiddo, and I need to help them calm back down. This, again, is all talking about walking them through it, having them tell you, after the fact, what made you get to that point? What were the things that got you escalated or got you feeling those feelings? And the biggest thing, and I think the hardest thing for me as a parent, truthfully, honestly, and even as an educator, is going up to a kiddo, who fell down in tag and is just crying. And I know that they didn't really hurt themselves. It's more the shock of it. And I don't say to them, oh, you're all right, get back up, just keep on playing and brush it off. It'll be fine. One of the things that I've really switched myself to saying is, you know what? I understand right now that you are feeling sad because you didn't expect to fall down in tag, and it probably scared you, didn't it? And that's how I start that conversation. And I do this with my own kids too. When they come home and they maybe had a bad day, I'm like, I understand that you are feeling, or I can really tell that you are feeling this, this, and this. And why don't you tell me why it happened? And if they can't, give them time. Don't pressure them. Let them come off of that escalation, whatever it is, however big it is, and give them time. And then make sure you revisit it, because the more you do it, the easier it is for your kiddos to tell you what's going on. The quicker they bounce back, the less tantrums you'll have, the fewer crazy, scenarios. I just remember my middle kid just bursting in tears and just crying hysterically over the smallest things. And we worked so hard with her on a lot of these things. And this book really helped us with that. And it helped me be a better educator too. All right. And then, to go along with that, when your kiddos do have those escalations, know that it takes anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes for the amygdala to come back to normal, to know that it's not being threatened anymore, to know that I'm okay and I'm safe. So when you ask them in the heat of the moment, if they're still crying and they're coming down from it, you're not going to get much out of them. You're not going to get much out of them, not until they've learned how to process, that it takes a long time. So give them some time to call back down before you ask them those questions. And then, do you know your kiddos' triggers? Do you know what gets them to those escalation points? Is it lack of sleep? Is it, they're hungry? Is it maybe a friend at school? Or is it a certain time of day? Like those types of things. If you start to see these things happen over and over again, those are some things to really think about and help your kid understand why maybe they're feeling like this or why these things are happening. All right. Woo. And finally, the why. Besides the fact that you love your babies, all of these repeatedly done, will help to close those developmental gaps, the big motor developmental gaps. And this is for every child. If you have a kiddo who is, developmentally fine, that's amazing. You guys are doing all the right things. They're getting all the right things that they need to stay on track. But all of these silly, goofy things that, I shared with you, it doesn't hinder anyone. It doesn't stop anything. It doesn't, make anything worse. All it does is increase those connections. It makes them so much stronger. And then it will break down the old ones and create the new neural pathways for that neuroplasticity to happen between the right and the left hemisphere, right? And help that amygdala understand, if things are safe, if things are not safe. All of these things are just really helpful. And then this in turn, like we talked about, allows the brain to work like it's supposed to without as much struggle. It will equal a lot of things for you. increased attention span, task initiation, higher achievement scores, less behavior issues, and kids self-regulating. So when a kiddo can self-regulate, that means they're in a situation where they usually throw a tantrum, and they're able to do, their brain is able to tell them what to do to keep them from escalating. So that is self-regulating, or being able to come back down from something, quicker than usual. Oh, which makes an overall happier family and happier parent, right? Okay. So there were, that was a whole lot. I want you guys to know as parents that you all are absolutely amazing, and probably people don't tell you that enough, and you need to hear it. And I heard a really interesting and amazing quote not too long ago that I tell myself constantly. And you probably always grew up hearing practice makes perfect. And it's not always practice makes perfect, because if you practice the wrong thing, it's not perfect. If you're making those incorrect neural pathways, that's not good. So what I heard was practice makes permanent. And that's just something to really think about when you think about your kiddos and them developing and growing. And then hopefully you guys took away a couple of things from this session. I hope you did. I hope as a parent, from parent to parent, that you were able to learn a couple of things and maybe start doing some things with your own kiddos. And I am at Green Tree. You can absolutely email me, and I'm sure these ladies will share this presentation, so you will have that for you. And then these are my resources that I used from here for today. And then these are the reflexes I was talking to you guys about. And these reflexes are super, super important when it comes to the development of our kiddos. This is why we see, the melters and the spinners and the fidgeters I was talking to you about earlier. These videos are very informative and I really enjoy them. But just to give you the bare bone basics of what they are, we start with actually the last one I have down here. So the atomic labyrinthine, this is, from newborns. This is when they react to gravity. And what really helps them when doctors tell you about tummy time, like this helps integrate that reflex. And when this reflex does not integrate, it spawns all kinds of problems down the line. And then the other two, the ATNR and the STNR, these are big ones too that I see a lot in PE. And those are, so the ATNR is the one-sided movements. The head moves, the arm moves, the leg moves on one side of the body. So we know that, one of the hemispheres is doing its job, and then the other side will move. So once that's integrated, that's a great thing, because then that leads to the STNR, and the STNR is moving from the floor into the crawling position. So these are really, really important things that our kiddos need to reach these milestones in order to continue on with their development. And when these get missed or the connections aren't made to the fullest extent, this is one of the things that we go back to when it comes to what we see in our kiddos, when it comes to, the melters and the spinners and all of those types of things. So I put these videos on here for you guys just to watch later if you feel like it. And if not, it's really not a big deal, but it was just a big part of my research. It really helped me become a better teacher and a better parent. So that, and I also put a video in here about trauma in the brain, just to give you a little bit more about the learning brain and the survival brain and what it looks like when your kiddo is in a tantrum or when they're really escalated. So this is something too, but I didn't want to take time and have you watch it unless you wanted to watch it. All right. I am stopping sharing, and maybe, okay, it said I stopped.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Okay, woo, I'm done. I talked a lot. Oh, you're muted. Terry, you're muted.
There we go. My house was kind of loud. So thank you for presenting. If nobody.
Hi, Angie. Sorry, I see Angie.
Hey, Sally.
So,
Sorry I was late.
You're
if
fine.
you have any questions, feel free and ask. Or my house is so loud. My house is really loud.
You're fine. I don't hear anything.
Oh, that's great. That's great news.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then, Addie, we have feedback forms, right?
We do. I will send, if you RSVP'd, I will send you a feedback form, and this will go on YouTube tonight. Sometimes it takes a little bit, but I will send that link out again to those who RSVP'd. You'll get that in an email. Oh, and the PowerPoint. I will share the PowerPoint as well.
Absolutely. And I forgot to answer the questions. I got to
Oh,
do that
yeah.
really fast. I'm so sorry. So a parent sent in these questions and they wanted to know, how does motor and core strength impact speech? And that is way above my research levels. So I actually have an email out, and when I get that, I will email it to Tara so she has it. So whoever you are, hopefully we can get that information to you. But they also asked about when is toe walking a concern? Toe walking should really disappear in between like 18 and 24 months. So if you're still seeing that, around the age of 2.5 to 3 years, I would definitely seek some advice on that. And that's like, if it happens a lot, if it's just a pretend thing or something like that, that's a little bit different. But if you're seeing it consistently, I would definitely check on that. And then the other one was best ways to improve gross and fine motor. I think I touched on a lot of things, hopefully, in the presentation that will help you at home. So that was it.
Awesome. I was going to say, we, with toe walking and stuff at my school, we see quite a bit of that. And so one thing I would just always try just those verbal reminders and just see, because stuff does become habitual also. And so if they're used to that, see if they can kind of self-correct as you prompt them. But if they go right back up there, I think it's definitely something to look into. You don't want those muscles tight. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sally. And then, if we have any other questions, we can always filter them to you, but your email is also on there. So feel free to contact her. And thank you for presenting. You were amazing.
Oh, thank you guys so much. This was awesome. Anytime. I'm happy to be here and happy to help.
Awesome. All right.
Oh, I was going to say, so on TikTok, because that's the thing I do now, I'm old. There's a guy who does all these brain development and motor development. So he does, like, if you can do a thumbs up and then put your pinky out. So like that.
Yes. Yes.
That was really hard. But
yes.
He has these different things. So I made all of my kids do it at the dinner table. I was like, before everybody eats, let's do this.
Yes. I love that.
Fun. Making your brain talk to each other.
Yes, that's amazing. I think that's awesome. I'll have to look them up.
But yes,
all
I
right.
will be out tonight, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you,
guys.
All right, see you later. Have a good one.
I don't know how to do this.